right, folks, welcome to According to Sam. This is episode 231. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you had a great weekend. Boy, are things happening fast now. We're going to get back into talking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last week. It was a failed attempt. And then after the failed attempt on Donald Trump's life last week, a week later, Joe Biden drops out of the race. What a coincidence. The director of Secret Service testified in front of the House Oversight Committe today, as I told you in the last podcast, and we are going to cover some of her testimony. She did everything she could to cover up, to filibuster the time of the 5 minutes that each representative had to question her. She, did a lot of referring to the FBI and the FBI investigation, an open investigation, so she couldn't comment. She worked really hard not to give anything to Congress. And for the most part, Congress was bipartisan. They were equally trying to get to the truth, outside of certain clowns like Jamie Raskins, who is the minority leader, who kept referring to gun violence and how guns are the problem. No, we're not there for guns. This doesn't have anything to do with guns, Jamie Raskins. This has to do with security failures that are blatant security failures and an attempt on a leading presidential candidate's life. That's what we're here for, not to talk about guns. But outside of Jamie Raskins, a couple of the squad members, AOC actually asked some real questions. But what I'm telling you is that it was truly bipartisan. They actually, I'm criticizing Jamie Raskins, but Jamie Raskins and the chairman, what's his name? Chairman Comer, actually, in a joint statement, this is it right here on the congressional letterhead, Congress of the United States, and then they submit this letter to Kimberly Cheatle, and they're asking for her resignation. So this was bipartisan, that both Comer and Raskins signed this, that both parties from the House of Representatives are asking for Kimberly Cheatle to resign. She hasn't resigned, and she hasn't been fired. I don't know who's going to fire her. Who's going to fire her? Kamala Harris? Because since last Wednesday, there's been no sight of Joe Biden, even though he's resigned from the campaign. So the press can't even pressure Joe Biden on this letter, this joint letter from the minority and chairman of the House Oversight Committe. If we had a functioning president, a functioning executive who was handling his regular functions, then the press would be hounding him. Why hasn't this woman been fired? She's been asked by both members of both parties in the Oversight Committe to resign, and she hasn't resigned. Why hasn't she been fired is what the press would be asking Joe Biden, but he's nowhere to be seen. And I don't guess Kamala Harris can do any firing yet, but so let's get into some of this testimony from today. It was explosive. And if you know what you're looking for, it was 3 hours of testimony. Again, she tried to stonewall. She tried to obstruct as much as she can. We'll actually start here with Congressman Comer, who's the chairman of the House Oversight Committe. And these are his closing statements. And these are the critiques that he makes of Mrs. Cheatle and her cooperation in this 3-hour hearing, where she made an attempt to say nothing. I'm going to tell you, she did say something. She said something very significant. And I'm going to show you what she said, which was very significant, but it was like a needle in a haystack, getting to this significant thing that she did say, because there was a bunch of hay, and I found the needle, and I'm going to show you what the needle is. But let's listen to Comer here in his critique of her cooperation in this hearing.
Director Cheatle, I subpoenaed you to appear today to get answers for the American people about the failures that led to the assassination attempt of President Donald J. Trump. Unfortunately, you refused to answer today. And this committee is not known for its model of bipartisanship, but I think today we came together unanimously in our disappointment for your lack of answers. You've stated that the FBI will investigate and give a report, and you estimate 60 days. We've been waiting for months and months for lots of different bits of information from the FBI.
Ain't going to get anything from them.
In the FBI.
They still haven't told us. They still haven't told us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th from 3 years ago. And she kept referring to the FBI. Oh, the FBI will give you that information. We're not going to get anything from the FBI. The FBI is under the same administration as you are. So if the stonewalling is coming from the top, from the Biden administration, then we're not going to get anything from the FBI. We're not going to get anything. It's Biden's FBI. We're not going to get anything from Biden's Justice Department. We're obviously not getting anything from you, Biden's Secret Service. This is the Biden administration. We're not going to get anything from the FBI
for months and months for lots of different bits of information from the FBI. We have no confidence in the FBI. The majority of this committee has no confidence in the FBI. I sincerely hoped that the hearing today would give not just Congress confidence in the Secret Service, but the American people would have confidence.
We have none
in the Secret Service.
Still, after this 3-hour hearing, no one has any more confidence that this was not an inside job. This was not the Biden administration trying to kill his political opponent. After her hearing today, she put none of that to rest. No, we have no confidence in the Secret Service after this hearing today.
People would have confidence in the Secret Service. We don't have confidence.
Nope.
Not just in Congress, but I don't believe the American people.
And this is coming.
Go to bed.
Understand?
Have confidence.
This is coming from both. What he's saying right now, basically, that they have no confidence, that's coming from both Jamie Raskin's Democrat and from James Comer, the Republican. This is coming from both parties. Both parties have asked for her to resign. Both parties have no confidence in her. And she still has a job. She's still there. And she still hasn't been fired by Joe Biden.
That the Secret Service is the best it can be at protecting President Biden, at protecting the First Lady, at protecting President Trump, at protecting their families. That's what the primary role for the Secret Service should be. And some people have said and speculated, well, there needs to be more money and more employees.
More
As
money.
I stated early on, $3.1 billion, I believe.
$3 billion is what it came out in this hearing. When I heard that in the beginning of this hearing, my jaw dropped. $3 billion. And I think they said something like they have a personnel of, I think it's something like, I don't remember what they said the personnel was, but $3 billion. $3 billion is their budget.
And more employees.
The Capitol Police, which protects Congress, their budget is only $500 million. $500 million is what Capitol Police gets. Secret Service gets $3 billion. Just wow.
As I stated early on, $3.1 billion. I believe next year it's going to be $3.2 billion.
And they get a raise. They get a raise.
8,000 employees. If the Secret
8,000. That's what I thought.
Too thin and doing things like inspecting counterfeit, which is what the Secret Service was created to do, was to inspect counterfeit.
Because it's part of the Treasury Department. A lot of people don't know that, but Secret Service is under the Treasury Department.
Which is what the Secret Service was created to do, was to inspect counterfeit money and things like that with the Treasury. If it's spread too thin, then we need to come together in Congress, and I think we can do that in a bipartisan way to narrow the focus of the Secret Service, to protect the leaders
It
of our
was
country
not
to
a
protect-
lack of resources. That was not it. They have plenty of resources. $3.1 billion. Stop it. Has nothing to do with resources. They have plenty of resources. Let me show you the type of questions that she refused to answer. And remember, this is the Oversight Committee. The entire function of this committee is to have oversight of the executive branch. And the Secret Service, like I just told you, like the FBI, like the DOJ, that's all under the executive branch. So this committee is set up to have congressional oversight. That's the entire objective of this committee, the Oversight Committee. So these are the type of questions that Cheatle refused to answer today. Again, she's still at her job. Take a listen.
The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
I love that she genders. She genders this person because we don't know if this person is a he or a she, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is being she's being funny here by referring to her as a she because of all the women in Trump's detail and the criticisms of all the women in the Secret Service. But it's a very important question that she's asking here. She's asking, who was the point person? Who was the person that was in charge? If this is the Oversight Committee and we're supposed to get to oversight of what happened, we have to know who was in charge. Who was in charge of the scene? Who was the point person? Who is the person that everybody else was answering to in the chain of command? Who was that person? It's a very, very important, question. And you can't do oversight if you don't have the answer to this question, but she refuses to answer.
A counter sniper element and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our questions.
That's not only is she not going to provide a name. This is a very important name. They're not going to even tell Congress who was in charge, who was in the person in the chain of command that everybody else was answering to, which is very important question. She refused to answer it. Refused to answer.
What is her Secret Service background?
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our
This
questions.
forum, I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
So she does say
That is
not.
correct.
She does say not in this form. So maybe they can get that answer behind closed doors. We'll see. But this is some of the stonewalling she did for 3 hours. Did not let. She didn't give up anything, or she thought. I'm going to show you what she did give up here in a moment. She gave something very significant up. I want you to listen to this line of questioning. This is Representative Lynch. Take a listen.
Director Cheatle, there were multiple security failures at the former president's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. First of all, there was a failure to isolate the podium from exposure to direct fire. Do we know who made that decision?
So this is the same question that you just heard Marjorie Taylor Greene ask, essentially, that who was in charge? Who made the decision to put the stage right in the line of fire and then keep that building? You have to know who this person was in the chain of command. Who was in charge? She refuses to answer again.
Isolate the podium.
Again, she does say not in this form. Maybe she does give up the name behind closed doors, but she definitely doesn't in this hearing.
From exposure to direct fire. Do we know who made that decision to allow that rooftop to remain as an unprotected area? Do we know who came up with that security plan that omitted that?
Who's in charge, Kimberly?
Sir, I don't have a specific person to identify for
Okay,
you?
well, that's what I'm looking for.
Of course, that's what we all want.
Move on.
We all want that person.
There's also
Who's that
breakdown in
person?
security in failure to confront the shooter over an hour before the former president began his remarks.
All right, this is very important. This is very important because it's been widely reported that this guy Crooks was identified as a suspect, and this became very important in this hearing. The difference between a suspect and a threat. That's the distinction that is made, and that Kimberly Cheatle makes several times in this. This becomes a theme in this hearing. The difference between a suspect and a threat. And he was identified as a suspect an hour before Trump took the stage. Identified as a suspect, and you're going to hear about what that means. But you have to understand that distinction, the distinction between because when I explained to you what she did let out of the bag, I mean, this is shocking. This is explosive, what I'm getting ready to show you. But that's the difference between a suspect, someone who is suspected of being a threat, and then an actual threat is this distinction that is made here. So Representative Lynch is referring to him first being identified as a suspect an hour before Donald Trump takes the stage.
The shooter was identified as a person of interest. What particularly allowed agents or law enforcement to identify him as a person of interest?
So that's a key question. So what was it that made this guy a suspect? I mean, when he was identified an hour before Trump took the stage, what was it that made him? Was he acting weird? Was he looking weird? Was he, casing the place? Well, I mean, what was it that made this guy that he caught the attention of the local police, which notified the Secret Service? What was this guy doing that identified him as a suspect an hour before Donald Trump took the stage?
So I appreciate the question. And again, I will say that we are 9 days out, and there are a multitude of interviews that are still taking place.
Okay, so
I mean, after 9 days, you don't know? I mean, seriously, it's been 9 days, and you're telling me that you don't know what made this guy a suspect? And what more interviews? I mean, that should be one of the things that you learned in one of your first interviews. I mean, it's being reported all over the news. NBC's reporting it. Everybody's reporting that this guy was identified as a suspect an hour before Trump took the stage, and you're telling me that you can't answer that question, what it was that made this guy a suspect?
So I appreciate the question. And again, I will say that we are 9 days out, and there are a multitude of interviews that are still taking place.
Okay, so did he have a rangefinder? There were some reports that the individual had a rangefinder. That would certainly raise my suspicion. Did he
It's
have
been
a
widely
rangefinder?
reported.
Yes, he did. But may I explain that at a number of our sites, especially when you're at outdoor venues, a rangefinder is not a prohibited item.
Nobody's saying it's prohibited. Nobody asked if it's prohibited. Yes, he's allowed to have it if he's got a good reason to have it. Did anybody go up to him and ask him why he had it? Is he going to the golf course after the rally? What's going on? Why are you walking around with a rangefinder? What do you need a rangefinder for? Nobody says it's prohibited, Cheatle. But is it suspicious? Because we're asking the question, is what identified this guy as a suspect an hour before Trump took the stage? He's walking around with the rangefinder. Is that suspicious? Nobody's saying it's prohibited. Is it suspicious? And it absolutely is suspicious, and that's why he was identified as a suspect, because he's walking around with a rangefinder.
Sites, especially when you're at outdoor venues, a rangefinder is not a prohibited item. It is sometimes an item that is brought in by individuals if you're going to be in the back.
Did anybody confront him on that? Anybody ask him questions? What are you doing with the rangefinder? Anybody confront him on his presence where he was in proximity to the president?
So again, to my knowledge, I believe that was the process that was taking place, was to locate the individual.
Did they
locate?
Did they go up to him? Did they talk to him?
I do not have those details at this time.
Those are important details. There was also a failure to communicate between law enforcement to act quickly upon information provided by either local law enforcement or rally attendees that the suspect was positioned on the roof. There were minutes of delay before any meaningful action was taken, even though he was several hundred feet from the podium, and this was obviously minutes before the shooting. Let me ask you, there was considerable delay in removing the president from the podium after the shooting began. He got shot in the air. It was still over a minute before he was removed from the stage. Meanwhile, this shooter had multiple clips, several clips. He got off 8 shots.
He got off how many shots? He got off 8 shots, people. He got off 8 shots. He was identified. Now, that's very important that this guy was identified as a suspect an hour before Trump took the stage, and he got off 8 shots. 8 shots.
Several clips. He got off 8 shots, and he had the capacity and the ability, if he was not neutralized, to basically mow down that whole Secret Service detachment as well as the president. What, from your own investigation, caused that delay under the circumstances?
What I can tell you is that when the agents identified that the shooting was taking place, in under 3 seconds, they threw themselves on top
I
of
understand.
So it's when the agents that were around the stage, when they realized that shooting was taking place, it took them 3 seconds to jump on top of Trump and start protecting him. All right. So 3 seconds is what she claims that it took. As soon as they figure out that, oh my God, there's shooting going on, Trump's already been shot once. This is, before the, so he got off 8 shots, 3, and this is what they're telling us. He got off 8 shots, 3, and then 5. In 3 seconds, when they realize that shooting is going on, they cover the president and they start protecting him. And that's when those first 3 shots are fired. And then after they're already covering him and protecting him, you hear the 5 shots later. So hold on. We're getting there.
Is that when the agents identified that the shooting was taking place, in under 3 seconds, they threw themselves on top of the president.
I understand that. There was heroism there. No question about it. No question about it. But protocol would indicate, and these are the opinions of various former Secret Service agents, people who have done this work in the past, that over a minute of exposure on that podium with a shooter with a high capacity weapon who had already wounded the president and could have got off, we don't know how many more rounds, and yet the president remained exposed, even though he was joined in that exposure by the Secret Service.
Yeah, it's even worse than that, Congressman Lynch. It's even worse than that. All right, let's listen to this guy questioning Kimberly.
Director Cheatle, as you know, the shooter began shooting at 6:11 p.m. Eastern on July 13th. NBC reported that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman.
Wow. Wow. Now listen to this. Listen to this. So 20 minutes, I guess they say that it was when they say that this guy was identified as a suspect an hour before Trump took the stage. That was the local police that were working with Secret Service, and they identified this guy because he's walking around with the rangefinder, acting weird, whatever it was to make the the local police identified this guy as a suspect. They did so an hour before Trump took the stage. So what he's saying here is that 20 minutes before Trump took the stage, the local police, they transmit this information to, I don't know why it took so long for them to transmit this information to the Secret Service that this guy's a suspect. But 20 minutes before Trump takes the stage, the local police comes to Secret Service and say, we got a suspect. We got someone who is walking around with a rangefinder. He looks fishy. And that's 20 minutes before. And then 2 minutes before Trump takes the stage, then they are alerting the sniper teams. And there's two different sniper teams. They're alerting the sniper teams. You're also going to hear that they have a picture of this guy. The local police, when they identify him as a suspect, they take a picture of him. So this picture is circulated to all these teams. When they go to the Secret Service and say this guy's a suspect before Trump takes the stage, then they have a picture. They're circulating the picture. 2 minutes before, they give the picture and information to the two sniper teams that this guy is a suspect. He's not a threat yet. He's not a threat. He's just a suspect.
Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct? He said that at 5:51 p.m., 20 minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53
or 2 minutes
PM,
later. So 20 minutes, and then not 2 minutes before, just 2 minutes later. So there's 20 minutes before Trump takes the stage, they notify the Secret Service, and then 2 minutes after that is when they notify the sniper team.
Minutes before the shooting began, the state police informed the Secret Service of their concern. Now, the rally was not paused at that point, correct?
No.
And according to NBC, just 2 minutes later, at 5:53 p.m., the Secret Service notified its snipers about the gunman. The rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
No.
Let me show you some video footage by rally goers. If you could play the video on the screen up here. This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started.
Listen to this. Look, people, look. So the state police, 20 minutes before Trump takes the stage, they notify this guy's a threat. Passing around a picture of this guy. We're watching this guy, walk around with a rangefinder. He's a suspect. We've identified this guy as a suspect. Do you take your eye off this guy if he's a suspect? Or do you keep watching him? Do you watch his every move? Do you see, if you identify this guy as a suspect an hour before Trump takes the stage, every single thing that he does after that point that he's identified as, he's not a threat yet. Nobody's saying that this guy's a threat. But every single thing that this guy does after he is identified as a suspect, he should do nothing that goes unnoticed from that moment on. Everything that guy does there should be watched. He should have eyes on him at every single moment from the moment he's identified as a suspect. He's not a threat yet. So what this guy is saying is that 20 minutes before Trump takes the stage, they come to Secret Service, give them a picture, tell them this guy, this suspect, very suspicious guy. And then they go to the sniper team. Sniper teams are on the roof. They have high points. And then they get them the information. Look, this guy's a suspect. They're watching him. So now we're watching this guy climb on the roof that has an open shot. The roof of this building. Let me show you real quick. Hold on. I don't want to go there yet. This is the roof of this building. Right here. Look at this. Hey, watch this guy climb on the roof of this building. Look at this. This is a straight shot. That's a straight shot. This video is being taken from a window right outside from where he was laying. This is the slope that Cheatle says that it was too slope to have people out here. So they didn't have anyone out here. And then the sniper teams are on these buildings here. So this is only 150 yards, people. They can see all of this. They can see this whole thing. This is impossible that he was identified as a suspect and he starts climbing on this roof and nobody's got eyes on him climbing on the roof, you have people yelling, hey, hey, he's on the roof. It's crazy.
This was taken 2 minutes before the shooting started. If you could turn up the volume.
Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals.
He's on the roof.
We have people that
right here, right on the roof.
He's on the roof. He's on the roof.
Right on the roof.
Hey, people, he's on the roof.
Ma'am, that doesn't look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior.
No,
to
he's
me.
still a suspect. No, Congressman. He's still a suspect at this point. He's still just a suspect. But nobody has any eyes on this suspect? Nobody knows what this suspect is doing. It was identified as a suspect an hour ago. No, he's not a threat yet. You're going to see when he becomes a threat. She actually answers the moment that he goes from a suspect to a threat. You're going to hear that in a moment. But at this point, the guy with the rangefinder who is identified as a suspect an hour before he starts shooting at the potential next president of the United States, when he starts climbing on the roof, and the Secret Service had information on this guy, the snipers had information on this guy, he's still a suspect, but nobody saw him. Nobody saw this suspect.
Ma'am, that doesn't...
The people are yelling, hey, there he goes. He's on the roof. He's on the roof. Nobody saw the suspect.
Look like suspicious behavior. That looks like threatening behavior to me. And the rally wasn't paused at that point either, correct?
I can tell you, as I stated earlier, sir, that the moment that the shift surrounding the president were aware of an actual threat.
That's a threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling.
That's not
at
a threat.
Him. Yes.
And
it's not a threat. That's not a threat. She says that is only suspicious, that even at that point that the guy with the rangefinder is climbing on the roof, he's still just a suspect. But it's so suspicious that at that point, you should have said, no, there's something. I mean, no, he's not a threat yet. Even if you can come to that conclusion that he's not a threat, which I think is ridiculous. I'm like this congressman. I'm like, yeah, of course that's a threat. The hell are you talking about? We're 60 years after the Kennedy assassination. You got a direct a shot at a potential president of the United States. You've already identified him as a suspect. He's walking around with the rangefinder climbing on the roof. I mean, yes, I agree with you that that's a threat. But according to her definition, he's still just a suspect. But still, and only just being a suspect at that point, with all this suspicious behavior, you don't have only one instance of suspicious behavior, you have multiple instances of suspicious behavior, then President of the Donald Trump should have not been allowed to go out and give that speech until someone had gone and talked to this guy at least. It's ridiculous that they let Donald Trump go out on that stage. And there's only one reason that I can think of why, and we're going to get into that. But listen more.
A threat right there. The guy's on the roof and everybody's yelling at him.
Yes.
And directing the officer's attention to him. The rally was not paused at that point, correct?
We are currently still combing through communications and when communications were passed.
Well, I can point you to this communication. It's 2 minutes before the shots started ringing out. Director Cheatle, yes or no? Was there ever a moment where the Secret Service actually considered pausing the rally?
The Secret Service would have paused the rally had they known or been
So the
told
answer is
there
no.
was an actual threat.
The answer is no. Correct?
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want generalities. I want
all
specifics.
of the communications.
The answer is
no.
no. You did not consider pausing the rally.
No,
correct?
they didn't pause the rally because they wanted Trump to come out. I'm sorry, people. No, they didn't think about pausing the rally because, no, they had other plans. But God.
I can speak to you in generalities.
No, I don't want
I don't
generalities. I
know
want
all of the
specifics.
communications
The
that
answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day.
Who is it? Who was in charge? The people that were in charge that day. Who were the people that were in charge that day? You won't answer that question.
I don't want generalities.
know
I want
all of the
specifics.
communications
The
that were-
answer is no. You did not consider pausing the rally, correct?
The people that are in charge of protecting the president on that day would never bring the former president out if there was a threat that had been identified.
Well, they did, because we've now identified 3 points in the 20 minutes before the shooting that the threat emerged. Let me point you to something else, which is the building that the shooter was perched on, seen here. This building is called the AGR building. I'm sure that you're familiar with it. It's no more than 150 yards from the stage where Donald Trump stood.
The video that I showed you here is this window here, is one of these two windows. This window or this window is where that video is taken.
Yet the security perimeter was drawn such that the AGR building was placed outside of it. Director Cheatle, according to the Washington Post, the AR-15 styled rifle used in the shooting had a range of 400 to 600 yards, and therefore the AGR building was clearly within rifle range of the stage, correct?
Yes.
NBC News has reported that in the days before the rally, the Secret Service had identified the building as a vulnerability that required special attention, correct?
That's reporting from NBC?
Yes.
So I am still looking into an active investigation.
I know, but it's been 9 days. I mean, you should know
She's
that.
stonewalling.
Right? And yet, despite the fact that the AGR building was in rifle range of the stage and it was flagged as a vulnerability, this building was put outside of the Secret Service's security perimeter. And I respectfully submit the Secret Service must expand its security perimeter to account for the kinds of
She's
weapons.
stonewalling. She's not giving you anything, and but that was great line of questioning. All right, let's get to Representative Langworthy here. Take a listen.
The most appalling part of Saturday's events is the countless opportunities that Secret Service had to stop Crooks before he even got on the roof. At 3 o'clock, Crooks raised suspicion by entering the rally with a rangefinder. At 5:45, a cop with a Beaver County Emergency Services unit saw Crooks eyeballing the roof at the AGR International Building. And then at 5:55, Secret Service was warned of a suspicious person and identifies Crooks as a threat. This was all before shots were fired 15 minutes later. Director, yes or no, did local law enforcement alert the Secret Service about Crooks' presence at the rally?
Yes, they did.
The shooter came to attention of law enforcement almost an hour before President Trump went on stage. Law enforcement alerted the Secret Service of the shooter. Over and over, you've said there's a difference between a suspicious individual and a threatening individual. Can you explain what the shooter needed to exemplify to be called a threat?
So I'm not clear as to what identified him as suspicious.
It was the rangefinder. It was the rangefinder that identified him as suspicious. And if you've seen the picture of this guy, the picture where he looks trans, and I mean, who knows what this guy was doing to identify? He's a weirdo. He's probably on all kinds of drugs, probably MK Ultra.
Called a threat.
So I'm not clear as to what identified him as suspicious to the individuals who originally clarified him that way. For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
I mean, Director, an individual walking into a rally.
So that's the threat. That's it. Just so that's why you understand that when this guy's asking her, you know, is the guy that you've identified as a suspect who's got the rangefinder, you know, he's being suspicious. You've identified him as suspicious. He's climbing on the roof. All that stuff is still just suspicious. What she says here, what Kimberly Cheatle says here, is that he doesn't cross over into being a threat until he has a weapon, brandishing a weapon. He's about to harm someone, is what she says. That's when he goes from being a suspect to a threat. Listen again.
For the Secret Service, for an individual to be determined to be a threat, that individual would have to be seen with a weapon or capable of doing some sort of harm to our protectees.
All right, so he would have to be seen with the weapon or capable of doing some kind of harm to someone they're protecting. That's how he becomes a threat and not just a suspect. Okay, Let's listen to this line of questioning. This, I forget which representative this is, but he gets to the heart of when that happened. This is very important. When did Crooks cross that line from when did he have the weapon in his hand and pointing the weapon at Donald Trump? When did that happen? When did they identify him as a threat in that regard? She's already said what a threat is, how you go from being a suspect to a threat. You go from being a suspect to a threat. Once you have a weapon, once you're pointing the weapon, you're getting ready to, you're a threat at that point. So the threat has to be neutralized. The moment that you realize that this person is a threat. Secret Service got information that this guy was suspicious 20 minutes before Trump takes the stage. 2 minutes after that, they relay that information with his picture to the sniper units that have high ground, the sniper units that have scopes. They're looking around. They see this guy. This is the suspicious guy. He's climbing up on the roof. He's still just suspicious. But the moment that the sniper units with the scope, when they see this guy touch a weapon and point it, he shouldn't have even gotten off one shot, let alone 8 shots, people. Because as soon as he touches the gun, he crosses over from a suspect to a threat, and then the threat has to be neutralized immediately once he touches the gun. Take a listen.
When did Mr. Crooks' status go from a suspicion, a person that was under suspicion, to a threat? When did that happen? And maybe not even a specific time, Director Cheatle. Maybe a certain event that happened that transformed him from a person of suspicion to a threat. When did that happen?
To the best of my knowledge, based on what I've been told thus far, it's approximately 5 minutes to where individuals relayed that there was an incident being worked at the 3 o'clock.
It's such a good question. I love because she's trapped. She's trapped. This is such a good question because she's trapped.
Approximately 5 minutes to where individuals relayed that there was an incident being worked at the 3 o'clock of the president.
So that was, but it was before the shots were fired? That
is correct. But again, it was not phrased as a threat. It was just that something was being worked.
Yeah, but my question is, when did he become, when did he transform from suspicion to threat? Because they're treated very differently. People can be suspicious, but they're not a threat until a certain point in time. So when did that happen?
I believe that it was seconds before the gunfire started.
Seconds before the gunfire started. So he was identified as a threat by Secret Service, by the sniper teams, seconds before he started shooting. Boom, take out the threat. He shouldn't have gotten a shot off, let alone 8 shots. This guy gets off 8 shots. And she says that he was identified as a threat seconds before he shoots the first shot. All right. Let's get back into the clip we listened to last week. And this is Dr. Martinson, and he is using the sound of these shots. And I don't know if you watched the whole clip, but he determines there's 2 different shooters by the sounds. I'm not going to even mess with that. Let's just listen to how long it takes for all the shots to be fired, because she says that he became a threat seconds before he shot the first shot. This guy gets off 8 shots. 8 shots. He's already identified not as a suspect, but as a threat, people.
This is that.
Take a look at what happened.
All right, boom, 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 boom. All right, boom, boom, boom. Even if he gets off those 3 shots alone, he should have immediately been taken out. Immediately, if he's identified as a threat seconds before he shoots, then he gets off 3 shots. Boom, he doesn't get off any more shots than that. Boom, boom, he's identified as a threat. This guy gets off 5 more shots, and they still don't take him out for another 10 seconds. It's 15 seconds from the moment this guy shoots his first shots. 15 seconds before he's neutralized. This is BS, people.
Somebody, whoever put this video together, did the counting. Thank you for that. Room for interpretation here as well about that. So, without any further ado, this is that
Take
audio
a look at what
we're
happened.
analyzing. Wait. Hang on. You're going to hear one more.
Boom. That's 15 seconds. That last shot was the shot that they used to take him out, to neutralize him. He was identified as a threat before he took the first shot. He gets off 8 shots. And then it takes another almost 10 seconds. I have this little stopwatch here. We're gonna keep quiet for 15 seconds. I want you to see how long this is. That's how long it took them from the moment. Let's do it again. 15 seconds. We're going to keep quiet. 15 seconds and go. That's how long it took. 15 seconds for them, after they identified him as a threat, after he shoots the first shot, and he was identified as a threat seconds before he took the first shot. So he shouldn't have even got off the first shot, but he gets off 3 shots and then 5 more. And then it takes almost 10 seconds for them to finally neutralize them. This shooter, if he's the only shooter, this makes no sense at all. And it's ridiculous. Again, if you believe this, you may as well believe in the Easter Bunny. You may as well believe in the Tooth Fairy. You may as well believe in Santa Claus if you believe this. Let's listen again.
That
Take a look at what happened.
Wait. Hang on. You're going to hear one more.
Wow. So, I mean, this, again, it stinks to high heaven. There's absolutely no way this guy was identified as suspicious an hour before and then a threat seconds before, and then he gets off 8 shots. It makes no sense at all. So let's get into motive, because I absolutely do not believe that that this Cooks guy is the guy who is the lone shooter. I mean, I see so many parallels between the Kennedy assassination and this attempted assassination. I'm not even going to get into the put options on Donald Trump's media company. I'm not going to even get into that weirdness and stuff, but there is so many questions. There's so many weird things. This country should be in mourning right now. And that's what they expected. They absolutely expected. But I don't believe that Crooks was the shooter, and they haven't come up with the motive. We're 9 days after the fact, and they don't have any motive for why Crooks would be the shooter. I don't believe he was the shooter. If the people who I believe were actually trying to kill Donald Trump, for them, I can think of an ironclad motive for why. And I don't even want to say Joe Biden because he's a puppet. Let's just call him the deep state. I can think of an ironclad motive of why the deep state would have wanted to take out Donald Trump. And it has a lot to do with the military-industrial complex. It has, again, the parallels for why they took out Kennedy and why they were trying to take out Trump. You should have heard. I watched all these guys, these conservative commentators during the RNC last week crying over Ukraine. Oh, they're not talking about Ukraine in the RNC. Oh, they're not. The Reagan Republicans are gone. You know, we want war. I can't tell you how many of the Rockefeller war hawk Republicans that were crying last week because the RNC wasn't focused on Ukraine. So we want to talk about motive. It's a very clear motive if you don't look at crooks. So they're running around looking for a motive for crooks. No, there's no motive for him. But if you look at the real culprits that tried to take out President Trump, the motive's clear. Slaps you in the face. George Carlin, a comedy bit that he did back in the day has been going viral. I just want you to listen to a little bit of what George Carlin says.
Assassination. You know what's interesting about assassination? Well, not only does it change those popularity polls in a big fucking hurry, but it's also interesting to notice who it is we assassinate. Do you ever notice who it is? Stop to think of who it is we kill. It's always people who've told us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Jesus, Gandhi, Lincoln, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam! Right in the fucking head. Apparently, we're not ready for that.
There's no money in it. Yeah. We're ready for it. The people are ready for it. The people are ready for peace. The people will be happy to live in harmony and peace. It's the people who make money off of war are the problem. And I'm sure George Carlin knew that very well. Let's listen to, again, we listened to this clip last week. This is Representative Corey Mills, former sniper, and the accusations that he makes in this interview with CNN. Again, we're talking about motive, not motive of the crooks, Patsy. We're talking about the motives of the deep state. Take a listen.
Here's my problem. In having done this for so long, they always say the adage of ignorance is bliss, and I think that's true. I've done thousands of advances. I've done thousands of counter-sniper operations with our teams in Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. The amount of negligence, the amount of mistakes that was made here, I have a very difficult time not leaning myself towards this was intentional as opposed to fecklessness.
It was intentional.
Talk to me about that. I actually heard you say this right the day after, which I wanted to ask you about. What do you mean intentional?
You know,
I mean an intentional failure on the part of...
No, I wouldn't say an intentional failure on the part of, but I got to just, I sit here and I scratch my head. You don't want to be the conspiracist. You don't want to be the person.
I'm telling you, because that's what it's leaning toward.
No, I know. And that's the issue, is that you walk this fine balance of, you're not trying to be a conspiracist, but you look at it and you go, how could this have gone so...
But it's one thing if someone on the street says it. It's another. I mean, you, Corey Mills, member of Congress, former sniper, you saying it, I mean, it makes my eyebrows go up. When you say you're walking the line on this, intentional what?
You know, it almost seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. You know, I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take
whoa.
First we want to censor and silence you. If you look at the progressions, that the deep state, that's the theory, because we're being conspiracy theorists here. So the theory that we're working with is the deep state, the people who Chuck Schumer, when he had that interview with Rachel Maddow, he says, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways to Sunday to getting back at you. The deep state, that's what we're talking about. So we're working with that theory. And Corey Mills says here, he says, first, let's look at how they escalate things. First, they try to censor and silence you. First, they call you a Russian and open up a bogus FBI investigation to spy on your campaign, to get a special counsel investigation launched. They impeach you twice. They indict you. But how many times they indict him? 4 times. I mean, if you count each individual indictment in New York, I mean, he's been indicted numbers of times. We've done all these things to come at this guy. The very last play is to kill him. is to take him out. That's what Corey Mills is saying here. That's the last play. You've tried everything else. The very last play is to take him out. That's what the play was. That's why Joe Biden would still be in the race right now. He'd still be running for president if their final play would have worked. But not only did all their other plays fail, their final play failed last weekend. And that's why you have Kamala Harris now.
Seems to me, and I think that an investigation is necessary at this point within Congress, not just the FBI, not just others. I look back at it and I'm thinking, all right, for an individual, if you looked at the escalations and how they are trying to approach him, let's just say that it was like, okay, first we want to censor and silence you, then we want to indict and imprison you. Now we're attempting to kill you and take you off the stage.
Let's slow down.
Please.
I'm hearing two things from you. I don't want to jump ahead of things, but I'm also hearing you jumping ahead of things.
Well, actually, I'm just looking.
He's using his head is what he's doing. He's not jumping ahead, lady. He's using his head. Tucker Carlson. This is something that Tucker Carlson said. Everyone, anticipated this. People have been talking about this for months now, that they were going to try to kill him. They were going to try to take him out. Because everybody saw that, he kept beating all of their roadblocks that they were setting against them. All the indictments, everything was failing. The Supreme Court was intervening. Everything that they were throwing at this guy was failing. It didn't take a genius to understand that they were going to escalate this thing to trying to kill him.
What do you think the future holds? Is it...
I don't know.
I mean, are they going to let Trump be president?
No, of course. I mean, look, if, they protested him, they called him names. He won anyway. They impeached him twice on ridiculous pretenses. They fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back. Then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times, and every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination, obviously, and no one will say that, but I don't know how you can reach that conclusion. You know what I mean? Like, they have decided, permanent Washington, both parties have decided that there's something about Trump that's so threatening to them, they just can't have him. I mean, they're putting him on trial in March of next year in the J6 case, which basically consists of trying to send him to prison for the rest of his life for complaining about the last election. That's literally what it is. Again, if this were happening in Moldova, the State Department would issue an all-hands-on-deck order to let the world know this is
Banana
not
Republic
government. And yet, our government is doing it. It's like, it's hard to overstate how bad this is. And I don't know where it's going, but there's a collision that's clearly imminent. And by the way, the president is senile in a way that's impossible to deny.
Wow. Biden's
not running the government.
Wow.
So I don't know. I've never been this worried about
Tucker Carlson said the date on this is August 30th, 2023 is when Tucker Carlson said this. August 30th. Ow. I mean, and I don't even want to say that this guy is a Nostradamus or anything like that. It didn't even take a genius to see this. I mean, Stevie Wonder could see this. What are you talking about? Everyone knows where this is going, and it failed. And now Joe Biden has dropped out. We think he dropped out. He just released the letter yesterday after saying, for weeks and adamant that he wasn't going anywhere. He wasn't going to be dropping out. I don't have a lot more time. I just want you to listen to a little bit of Joe Biden's co-chair. This was yesterday morning on Face the Nation before a few hours later. They had to be drafting this letter when this guy's on this interview that morning. They had to be in the works of drafting that. I guarantee you the letter was drafted even before yesterday. And then this guy is on Face the Nation saying Joe Biden's not going anywhere. He's staying in the race. He's in it for the long haul. Take a listen.
We turn now to the co-chairman of the Biden-Harris re-election campaign, Cedric Richmond, and he joins us this morning from New Orleans. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Look at his face.
So,
he knows. They already drafted the letter.
As you know, before you, from two allies of Joe Biden who have now changed their position. And we now look at the tally of roughly 40 lawmakers who have called for Joe Biden to step aside. Clearly, leadership is setting up a permission structure for lawmakers to come out and say these things. Has Joe Biden lost control of the Democratic Party?
No, he's not. And he's heard those concerns. And I want to be crystal clear. He's made a decision. And that decision is to accept the nomination and run for re-election, win re-election. And I think that there are those out there that need to hear it again, that he made a decision. He's going to be the candidate. He's going to be the next president. And now it's time to focus on the threat that Donald Trump poses. And
hey, he's not going anywhere.
The extreme agenda is.
He's not going anywhere. He's going to be the candidate. He's all in. He's going to win. This was just yesterday morning. I guarantee you the letter that they released was already drafted. They released the letter. But this guy is co-chair of his campaign, going on Face the Nation, and he's all in. He's going to make. I want you to remember Alan Littman. We like Alan Littman and his 13 keys on this show. This was just last week. Alan Littman, he got a message from Ron Klain. Ron Klain is Joe Biden's chief of staff. Listen to what Alan Littman says about the message that he gets from Ron Klain.
Big breaking news. I just corresponded with Ron Klain, President Joe Biden's former chief of staff, and he assured me about President Biden, and I quote, he's staying in. Here's to the 13 keys which don't turn on fickle polling, unquote.
He's staying in. Here's to the 13 keys that don't turn on fickle polling. And Littman was getting into it with everyone. Everyone was challenging his keys and saying, your keys are wrong this time. There's no way that Joe Biden, because Littman didn't want this incumbency key turn and the contest key, because he knew that he was going to have to predict that the Democrats were going to lose if he loses. Now he's saying that they can save the contest key if everyone just anoints Kamala Harris. But this guy was an advocate saying, and that's why he's all excited here. I just got this information from Ron Klain. Biden's staying in. He's staying in. No, he's not staying in. He's out. He's out now. And man, we're in uncharted waters. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. But it's going to be a wild ride. I'll be here to cover it for you. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you on Friday.